My name is Adriana. I'm 18 years old. If you asked me then, I would have said my family was perfectly normal. Not rich, not poor, just middle. We had decent dinners, matching pajamas every Christmas, and a photo on the wall that made us look happier than we really were. But that illusion cracked the night I got my med school acceptance letter. I remember sitting at the dinner table, letter trembling in my hands, barely able to breathe. "I got in," I whispered, my voice trembling with excitement. "Med school. I did it." Dad didn't even look up from his plate. The clink of his fork against the plate was louder than my words. Mom glanced up, sighing like I'd just interrupted her TV show. "Adriana, that's great," she said flatly, "but you know how tight things are right now." I blinked, confused. "I'm not asking for a free ride, just a little help with tuition until I can start working. I'll pay it back." Dad finally spoke, voice low and detached. "We can't help, Adriana. We've got other priorities." I frowned. "Other priorities? You helped Ashley with her tuition last year." Mom didn't even hesitate. "Your sister needed it more." That was it. No discussion, no sympathy. Ashley, sitting across from me with her perfect curls and perfect smirk, didn't even look up from her phone. The light from her screen reflected in her eyes like I wasn't even there. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the word priorities echoing in my head like a cruel joke. 2 days later, I found out what those priorities were. I came home from school, and there it was, parked in the driveway, gleaming under the afternoon sun like a punch to the gut. A brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee, leather seats, metallic paint, the whole package. Dad stood outside proudly, showing it off to the neighbor. "$55,000, but worth every penny," he said. Ashley giggled from behind the wheel, revving the engine. "It's perfect, Dad." My hands went cold. $55,000. For a car. For her. The same week they told me, "Money's tight." I walked past them quietly, pretending not to care. But inside, something sharp twisted deep in my chest. In that moment, something between us broke. Something that would never fully heal. That night, I stared at my med school letter again. The same piece of paper that once made my heart race now felt heavy. My dream suddenly looked impossible. I thought about quitting, about giving up before I even started. But then, I remembered something Dad used to say whenever I cried as a kid. "The world doesn't owe you anything, Adriana. Toughen up." Fine, I thought, I'll toughen up. If they wouldn't invest in me, I'd invest in myself. The next morning, I started looking for work. Restaurants, shops, delivery, anywhere that would take me. Nobody wanted a student with no full-time experience. Finally, I got a warehouse job on the edge of town. 10-hour shifts, minimum wage, and a smell of dust that clung to your clothes no matter how many times you washed them. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even humane. The first day, I could barely lift the boxes. By lunch, my arms felt like fire. By closing time, I thought my legs would give out. The air inside the warehouse was thick, a mixture of sweat, cardboard, and stale coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed above like they were mocking us. "Pick up the pace, Adriana. Those boxes won't move themselves," the manager barked from across the floor. I wanted to tell him I was new. I wanted to say I was trying. Instead, I just nodded and kept moving. Every night I came home covered in grime. My hands were raw, my back ached, and my feet throbbed so badly I could barely stand in the shower. Mom would glance up from the TV when I walked in, her tone half distracted. "Long day?" "Yeah," I'd mumble. "You're learning the value of hard work," Dad would say without looking away from the screen. Hard work, that phrase made my stomach turn. Because while I was lifting boxes in a warehouse that smelled like rust and sweat, Ashley was taking selfies in her new car, her parents' golden girl, her life wrapped in silk ribbons and filtered light. One night I overheard Dad on the phone. His voice was proud, full of warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "Yeah, she deserved that Jeep," he said, laughing. "She's always been the responsible one." Responsible. The word cut deeper than I expected. Ashley didn't even have a job. She lived at home, spent her days brunching with friends, posting photos captioned #blessed. And me? I was out here breaking my back, eating instant noodles, and pretending I was fine. But the truth was, I wasn't fine. There were nights I'd sit on the floor of my room, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked older, harder. There was a permanent exhaustion there, the kind that no sleep could fix. Yet even in that exhaustion, I felt something else, something new. A spark. Maybe it was anger, maybe pride, maybe both. But it told me one thing clearly. I was done waiting for anyone to save me. Weeks passed. My routine became mechanical. 5 a.m., wake up. 6 a.m., warehouse. 6 p.m., classes. Midnight, collapse. No parties, no friends, no breaks. Sometimes my coworkers, older men with calloused hands and tired smiles, would tease me gently. "Kid, you shouldn't be here. Go study. Be a doctor or something," one said while wiping his forehead. "I'm trying," I replied, forcing a smile. They didn't know that I'd been working toward that dream my entire life. They didn't know my parents were the reason I was here instead of in a classroom full time. But I didn't complain. Complaining didn't move boxes. Complaining didn't pay tuition. What did pay tuition was swallowing pride and pushing through the pain. At home, the silence was worse than the warehouse noise. Ashley laughed upstairs, FaceTiming her friends, talking about weekend getaways and new shoes. Mom scrolled on her tablet. Dad watched TV. No one asked how I was holding up. No one noticed the bruises on my arms. No one cared that I was limping from a pulled muscle. I learned to stop expecting concern. I learned to smile when they called me hardworking, like it was praise instead of dismissal. One night, after another grueling shift, I stopped outside the house and stared at that shiny Jeep again, its chrome gleaming under the streetlight. My reflection stared back at me from its surface, sweat-soaked, exhausted, forgotten. I whispered to it softly, "If they won't invest in me, I'll invest in myself." Then I turned away, because that was the night I stopped being their daughter and started becoming my own person. The first thing you learn in warehouse life is that time stops belonging to you. Days blur together until you stop counting them. Every morning feels the same. The clang of steel doors, the hiss of forklifts, the echo of boots hitting concrete. My hands toughened after a few weeks, but the ache never left. The air was always thick with dust and the smell of engine oil. By the end of each shift, I could taste the metallic tang of exhaustion on my tongue. Most of my coworkers were older men who'd given up on dreaming years ago. They joked about bad backs and missed chances like it was normal. One of them, Paul, a man with kind eyes but broken posture, would always tell me, "Don't let this place eat you alive, kid. Get out while you can." I'd smile and say, "I'm working on it." But deep down, I was starting to wonder if I actually could. Every night after work, I'd drag myself to my evening classes. My classmates were kids my age, fresh-faced, carefree, and unbothered. They complained about homework and group projects while sipping coffee from expensive cafes. I envied their simplicity. One night, I caught my reflection in a classroom window. Sweat-streaked, dark circles under my eyes, warehouse dust still clinging to my clothes. I didn't look like them. I looked like someone twice my age, but I refused to quit. I told myself that every bruise, every ache, every long night was a step closer to freedom. Still, I couldn't escape the loneliness. I'd come home past midnight, body screaming for rest, only to find Ashley sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone while Mom braided her hair. Dad was usually half asleep in front of the TV. "Long day?" Mom would ask without looking up. "Yeah." "You should smile more," she'd say. "Ashley says people at work look down on you if you seem tired." Ashley would laugh softly. "Maybe you just need a job that suits you better, Adriana. Something less sweaty." I forced a grin. Not all of us get new Jeeps handed to us for being responsible. That wiped the smile off her face, but only for a second. Mom's glare was sharp. "Don't be jealous, Adriana. Your sister works hard too." I almost laughed. Works hard doing what? But instead I walked away, because arguing with them was like yelling into a vacuum. A month later, the accident happened. I'd been moving a heavy crate across the slick concrete floor when someone spilled oil and didn't bother to clean it up. My foot hit the spot wrong, and I went down hard. The sound of the crate crashing echoed like thunder. A sharp, burning pain shot through my ankle, twisting it in a way ankles shouldn't twist. I couldn't move. I screamed, but the machines drowned it out. No one came for almost a full minute. When the supervisor finally showed up, he looked annoyed, not concerned. "You need to be more careful," he said. I gritted my teeth. "I need a doctor." He sighed like I'd asked for a vacation. "Fine, take the rest of the day off." No ambulance, no paperwork, just dismissal. I limped outside, half-hopping to the nearest bus stop, clutching my ankle as tears blurred my vision. Every step sent waves of pain through my leg. At the clinic, the doctor told me it was a severe sprain and I'd need to stay off it for at least 3 weeks. 3 weeks? That was 3 weeks without pay. I sat there in that cold, sterile room, staring at the wall while the doctor wrapped my ankle. I'd worked so hard to stand on my own, and now I couldn't even stand. Literally. When I got home, I called Mom, voice trembling. I hurt my ankle at work. The doctor says I can't walk for a while. There was a pause. Then she sighed. That's too bad, honey. Anyway, Ashley's thinking about upgrading her car. Maybe you can help her find a good deal. You're good with research. My mouth went dry. Mom, I can't even walk. I know, dear. Just try to stay positive. I hung up. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stared at the phone, my chest hollow. That was the moment I realized something painful but freeing. They didn't see me as a daughter anymore. I was background noise. The next few weeks were brutal. I couldn't work, which meant no income. My tiny savings drained fast. Rent, groceries, bills, everything came crashing down. I tried applying for lighter jobs I could do while sitting down, but no one wanted a limping student with no experience. I started skipping meals to save money. My apartment got colder every night because I couldn't afford the heating. And through all of that, not a single call from my parents. Not one. Meanwhile, Ashley's social media was full of brunch photos, weekend trips, and new designer bags. Each post felt like a slap. I scrolled through them late at night with my leg propped on a pillow, the throbbing pain pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Under one picture, Ashley posing beside her shiny Jeep, Mom had commented, "So proud of you, sweetheart. You deserve the world." I turned off my phone and let the darkness swallow me. When my ankle finally healed, I went back to the warehouse, limping, sore, but determined. The manager greeted me with a sarcastic grin. "Enjoy your little vacation?" I didn't answer. I just picked up the nearest box and started working. My body was weaker, but my resolve wasn't. I no longer worked for approval. I worked for survival. The others noticed the change. Paul gave me a knowing look during lunch. "You okay, kid?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I just learned my family's definition of love." He frowned. "And what's that?" "Conditional." He nodded slowly. "Then earn your freedom, Adriana. Don't give them power over your peace." That stuck with me. Every shove of a box, every night class, every ignored call. I repeated his words like a prayer. One evening, I got home late, dragging my bad leg, and saw Dad in the living room. He didn't ask how I was. Instead, he smiled proudly. "You're learning the value of hard work," he said. I smiled back, not because I agreed, but because I finally understood. They didn't see me, but that didn't mean I was invisible. I was becoming something they couldn't recognize, stronger without them. That night, I limped to my room, closed the door, and let out a shaky laugh. "Maybe disappearing was the best thing that ever happened to me," I whispered. When my ankle finally stopped aching, I expected to feel relief. Instead, there was just emptiness, like I'd been patched up on the outside, but something deeper inside had torn for good. Going back to the warehouse wasn't a choice, it was survival. Rent was overdue, my bank account was almost dry, and the stack of unpaid bills on my kitchen table grew heavier by the day. I remember limping through the warehouse gates that first morning back, the air thick with dust and diesel fumes. The same clanging, the same shouting supervisors, but something in me had changed. I wasn't the same girl who once believed her family's approval meant everything. I had no illusions left. The manager smirked when he saw me. "Well, look who's back. Took a nice little vacation, huh?" I stared him dead in the eye. "Yeah, best one of my life." His grin faltered. I didn't care. I'd lost too much to care. Work was harder now. My ankle throbbed every few steps, a dull reminder of how fragile everything still was. But I refused to slow down. I couldn't. Every dollar mattered. My coworkers noticed my limp. Paul, the older man who'd once warned me to escape while I could, started helping me carry the heavier boxes. He didn't say much, just gave me quiet nods of respect. One night, during a break, we sat outside near the loading dock. The air smelled like metal and rain. He lit a cigarette, the orange glow briefly lighting the lines on his face. "You're still in school, right?" he asked. "Yeah, trying to be a doctor someday." He exhaled a slow cloud of smoke. "Good. Don't stop. This place will eat you alive if you stay too long." I smiled faintly. "You've been here a long time?" 15 years, he laughed bitterly. "Came here for a summer job. Never left." The silence that followed was heavy. His words hit me harder than any lecture could. 15 years. That could be me, if I gave up now. But it wasn't just the physical grind that wore me down. It was the loneliness. At home, nothing had changed. Mom and Dad still acted like Ashley's life was the family's only success story. My calls were either ignored or rerouted into conversations about her new apartment, her weekend plans, her promotions that didn't really exist. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I walked into my apartment to find 5 missed calls from Dad. My stomach dropped. For a second, I thought maybe something was wrong. When I called back, his voice was casual, almost cheerful. "Hey, Adriana, glad you picked up. How's school going?" "It's fine," I said cautiously. "What's up?" "Well, your mom and I were talking. Ashley's decorating her new place downtown. You think you could chip in for some furniture? You know, family, helping family." For a moment, I couldn't even respond. "Wait," I said slowly. "You wouldn't help me with tuition because money was tight, but you want me to help Ashley buy furniture?" Dad sighed like I was being unreasonable. "You're doing well now, right? Working, studying. You've got your own income. Ashley's just getting settled. It'd mean a lot if you helped." Something inside me snapped. "Family helping family," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "That's rich. Where was that energy when I was barely paying rent after my injury? When I couldn't walk?" "Don't start, Adriana," he said sharply. "You know things were different back then." "Different how?" "You made a choice. You chose her. Every single time." There was a pause on the line. I could hear the faint hum of the TV in the background, my mother's voice chatting somewhere off screen. Then Dad said quietly, "You've changed." I stared at the floor, tears stinging my eyes, but my voice didn't shake. Yeah, I had to. And then, for the first time in my life, I hung up on my father. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. Not at first. It was deafening. Days passed without a word from them. No calls, no texts, no fake concern. But in that silence, I started breathing differently. The air felt cleaner, my chest lighter. I realized something. Peace doesn't always come wrapped in love and forgiveness. Sometimes it comes in distance. At work, I started doubling my shifts, saving every cent I could. The warehouse was brutal, but it paid enough to keep me afloat. My classmates at night school began to notice my focus, my determination. One of my professors pulled me aside after class. "Adriana, you're excelling," she said kindly. "Have you considered applying for scholarships?" I almost laughed. "Most of them go to kids with perfect GPAs or parents who can vouch for them," she smiled. "Then be the exception." That night, I filled out scholarship applications until sunrise. I didn't know if I'd get one, but it felt like the first time in years I was doing something for myself. A few weeks later, Mom called. The moment I saw her name on the screen, my stomach tightened. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hi, Mom." "Oh, good, you picked up." Her tone was overly cheerful, the kind that made my skin crawl. "How are you, sweetheart?" "I'm fine." "Well, Ashley just moved into her new place. It's gorgeous. You should see the kitchen, quartz counters and everything." Of course, it was always about Ashley. "That's great," I said dryly. She hesitated, her voice turning sweet again. The dangerous kind of sweet. "You know, she still needs a few things to make it feel like home. Maybe—" "Mom!" I cut her off, voice steady. "Don't. Not again." Silence. Then came the sigh. The same one she used when she was about to guilt-trip me. "Adriana, you're part of this family. We all help each other. Don't be selfish." I almost laughed out loud. "Selfish? You ignored me when I was begging for help, and now you want me to help her decorate?" "Watch your tone," she snapped. "We've done our best." "No," I said quietly. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." And I hung up. Again. But this time it felt right. That night, as I sat in my small apartment surrounded by stacks of books and empty coffee cups, I realized something. They could cut me out of their world, but I was building my own. I wasn't their disappointment anymore. I was my own success story in progress. The Jeep, the apartment, the favoritism, all of it still hurt, but it didn't own me anymore. When I closed my eyes, I pictured Paul's tired smile, his warning voice echoing in my head. "Don't let this place eat you alive." I smiled to myself. "Don't worry, Paul," I whispered. "I won't." 2 years later, I finally got the email I'd been dreaming of since I was a kid. "Congratulations, Adriana. You've been accepted into the medical program." I stared at the screen in disbelief. My hands shook. Tears stung my eyes. All the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the bruises, the loneliness, it all suddenly meant something. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there in my tiny apartment, surrounded by books and takeout boxes, letting the silence soak in. After a few minutes, I whispered to myself, "You did it." I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even think about it. They'd never celebrated my wins before. Why would they start now? For the first time in my life, the victory was mine alone, unshared, unpraised, and absolutely pure. 3 months later, just as I'd started to settle into med school life, my phone rang. Mom flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long time before answering. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Adriana, sweetheart." Her voice was unnaturally bright. Too bright. I could almost hear the smile stretching across her face. "How are you? We've missed you so much." I leaned back in my chair, already suspicious. "I'm fine, Mom. What's going on?" She hesitated, then said in that careful, sing-song tone she used whenever she wanted something. "Well, Ashley's wedding is coming up soon, and we've hit a bit of a financial snag. Things are just so expensive these days. The venue, the catering, the dress." I cut in before she could finish. "Mom, what exactly are you asking?" Her voice softened, syrupy sweet. "We were hoping you could help out a little. You know, family, helping family. It's her big day, Adriana. It would mean so much to her." For a moment, I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. I actually laughed out loud. "You want me to pay for Ashley's wedding?" "Well," she said, as if explaining something simple to a child, "you're doing well now, aren't you? You've always been so independent, and Ashley's been there for you." I couldn't stop myself from cutting her off. "Been there for me? When? When I was injured and couldn't walk? When I was starving myself to pay rent? When I begged for help and you told me money was tight, right before you bought her a $55,000 car?" Her tone shifted fast, from sugar to steel. "Adriana, that's not fair. You're being dramatic." I laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "You're right. Fair would have been helping both your daughters. Not just one. But you made your choice. Don't call me now because you regret it." Before she could answer, I hung up. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from freedom. A few days later, my phone buzzed again. Ashley. I hesitated, then answered, mostly out of curiosity. "Hey, Adriana," she said, her voice as fake sweet as ever. "Mom told me you're refusing to help with the wedding. What's going on?" "What's going on?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "Ashley, you've been handed everything your entire life, and now you expect me to pay for your fairy tale?" Her tone hardened immediately. "It's not about money. It's about family. You're part of this too." "Family?" I snapped. "Don't even start. Where was family when I was breaking my back in a warehouse just to survive? Where was family when I couldn't walk?" She sighed dramatically. "You're always so bitter. Maybe if you weren't, people would actually want to help you." That one hit like a slap. Not because it was true, but because it was exactly what Mom would have said. I took a deep breath. "You know what, Ashley? You're right. I am bitter. I'm bitter that I had to fight for everything while you coasted through life. But at least I can stand on my own. You can't even stand without Dad's wallet propping you up." Silence. Then, coldly, she said, "You're unbelievable." And the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then blocked her number. I didn't cry this time. I didn't even feel anger. Just a strange, quiet peace. Because I finally understood something. You can't build your future if you keep dragging the ghosts of your family's expectations behind you. A week later, Dad called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Adriana," he said slowly, "your mother's really upset. She says you were rude." "Was I?" I said flatly. Maybe I finally learned it from her. He sighed. "You know, your sister's wedding is important for the whole family. Can't you just let the past go?" "The past?" I repeated. "You mean the part where I begged for help and you both ignored me? Or the part where you bragged to your neighbors about Ashley's new car while I was walking to work with a sprained ankle?" He didn't respond. "Dad," I continued softly, "I've let a lot of things go, but not my self-respect." He tried one last time. "It's just money, Adriana. Don't let it ruin your relationship with your family." I smiled sadly. "It's not about money, Dad. It never was." Then I hung up for the third and final time. The night before the wedding, I saw a post on Ashley's Instagram. She was standing in front of a floral arch, diamond ring sparkling, captioned, "Can't wait to marry my best friend tomorrow. Family is everything." I scrolled past without liking it. Then I whispered to myself, "Family is what you make of it." And for once, that didn't make me sad. It made me proud. Because I'd finally stopped trying to be part of a family that never wanted to see me. I had become my own. I thought the wedding drama was over. I thought they'd just go ahead without me, post their perfect pictures, and keep pretending I didn't exist. But I was wrong. 2 weeks after Ashley's big day, there was a knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, my mother was standing there, red-eyed, clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. "Adriana, can we talk?" she said softly. Part of me wanted to shut the door, but another part, the daughter who once waited for her approval, stepped aside and let her in. She sat on my couch, eyes scanning the small space, the stack of textbooks on the table, the secondhand furniture, her face twisted into pity, the kind that wasn't about me, but about the image of me that embarrassed her. "You're still living like this?" she said finally. I folded my arms. "Like what?" She sighed, shaking her head. "I just don't understand how you can turn your back on your sister like that. She was so hurt you didn't come to her wedding." I laughed, a low, humorless sound. "You mean the wedding I was supposed to help pay for?" "Adriana, don't be cruel," she snapped. "You've changed. You used to be so kind, so giving. Now you're cold, bitter." "Because I stopped letting you use me?" I said quietly. Her lips tightened. "That's not fair. We did our best for you." I looked at her, really looked, at the woman who taught me to doubt my worth without even realizing it. "No, Mom, you did your best for Ashley. I just got what was left." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "You know what it's like, watching your parents beam with pride over someone else's life while pretending yours doesn't matter? Working double shifts just to survive while your sister gets a brand new car? Listening to you say money's tight, then watching you post pictures from her bridal shower?" She blinked, her expression flickering between guilt and defensiveness. "It wasn't like that." It was exactly like that. For the first time, she didn't have a ready answer. She just sat there, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. "I didn't come here to fight," she said softly. "I came because I miss you." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a second, I almost believed it. Almost. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You miss the version of me that never said no. The girl who smiled through every insult and called it love. I'm not her anymore." She shook her head, her eyes glassy. "I don't know when you became so cold." "I'm not cold," I said. "I'm healing." That silenced her. She stayed quiet for a while, staring at the floor. Then she whispered, "Your father wanted to come, but he thought you'd slam the door in his face." I looked away. "He's probably right." Her eyes filled again. "You'll regret this one day, Adriana. Family is all we have." I smiled sadly. "Maybe, but I'd rather have peace than family that only loves me when I'm useful." She stood slowly, clutching her purse again like a shield. At the door, she turned back, tears streaming down her face. "You'll always be my daughter." I nodded. "And you'll always be my mother. But that doesn't mean I have to keep letting you hurt me." Her lips trembled, but she didn't reply. She just walked out, quietly, like a ghost leaving the house for the last time. When the door closed, the silence was so deep it felt like the air had changed. For years, I'd imagined confronting her, screaming, crying, some grand explosion that would finally make her understand. But now that it was over, there was no anger left, just stillness. I sank onto the couch, staring at the spot where she'd sat. The faint smell of her perfume lingered in the air, mixed with the cheap detergent from my work clothes. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt like someone who'd finally taken back her voice. I whispered to the empty room, "This time, I chose me." It wasn't defiance. It wasn't rebellion. It was peace. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a notification. Ashley had posted new wedding photos, a grand ballroom, glittering lights, her perfect smile next to her new husband. The caption read, "The best day of my life. Some people couldn't be there, but I know they were with me in spirit." I almost laughed. I wasn't there in spirit. I wasn't there at all. And I didn't need to be, because I was finally free from a story I didn't write. Months passed after that night with my mother. The calls stopped. The texts stopped. The guilt-tripping stopped. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. I woke up each morning in my tiny apartment, sunlight spilling through thin curtains, the city noise humming faintly outside, and realized I could finally breathe without waiting for someone's approval. My days were long but purposeful. Mornings in med school, afternoons buried in labs and late-night study sessions. It was exhausting, but it was mine. Every note, every exam, every small win belonged to me. Not as someone's daughter, not as someone's shadow, but as Adriana. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if they were proud, but that thought didn't sting anymore. It just passed. One rainy afternoon, as I was walking out of campus with my umbrella flipping inside out in the wind, my phone buzzed. Dad. For a second, I almost ignored it, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, made me swipe to answer. Hello? His voice was slower than I remembered, tired. Adriana, hi. Hi, Dad. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear the rain pounding against the sidewalk. I just wanted to say, I wish things hadn't gone this way, he said finally. Your mom and we didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't matter. I closed my eyes, letting the words sit there. I could tell he meant them, even if it was years too late. He continued, voice cracking slightly. Your sister needed us back then. We thought we were doing what was right. I took a deep breath. I know you thought that, but it still hurt. He was quiet for a moment, then softly, I get it now. I didn't know what to say. For years I had imagined this apology. And now that it was here, it didn't feel like triumph. It just felt sad. Dad, I said gently, I don't hate you. I just can't go back to pretending nothing happened. He sighed, the sound heavy with regret. I understand. I just hope one day we can all sit together again, like before. Maybe, I said, but it'll take time. Okay, he whispered. Take care of yourself, Adriana. I always do, I replied and ended the call. For a long time, I stood there on the wet sidewalk, watching raindrops slide down my hands. I wasn't angry. I wasn't relieved. Just calm. Weeks passed. Med school consumed me, and I threw myself into it completely. One afternoon, I stopped by a small cafe near campus. The smell of coffee and cinnamon hit me as I walked in, and that's when I heard someone call my name. Adriana? I turned and froze. It was Paul, my old coworker from the warehouse. His hair was grayer now, his posture a little more bent, but his smile was the same. Paul, I said, walking over, it's been forever. He chuckled. I barely recognized you. You look happy. We sat down together. He told me he'd finally retired after an injury, something with his knee that never healed right. 15 years too late, but I'm out, he said with a half smile. I felt a pang of sadness for him and gratitude for myself. You were right, I said quietly. You told me to get out before this place ate me alive. I did. He grinned, his eyes kind. I knew you would. You had that fire in you. I saw it. We talked for an hour. About work, about life, about how some people never leave the places that break them. When we finally stood up to go, he patted my shoulder. I'm proud of you, kid. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. That night, I walked home under the streetlights, the cool air brushing against my face. As I passed a row of parked cars, a flash of silver caught my eye. A Jeep, almost identical to the one my sister used to flaunt. For a moment, I stopped and looked at my reflection in the tinted window. The girl staring back wasn't the same one who'd once cried over being left behind. She looked older now, stronger, softer too. I smiled. Maybe my parents would never really see me. Maybe Ashley would never understand. But that didn't matter anymore. Because I saw me. And that was enough. A week later, a message appeared on my phone from an unknown number. Ashley. Hey, Adriana. I know things have been weird, but I just want you to know I'm proud of everything you've done. Maybe we can talk sometime? I stared at it for a long while. There was a time when a text like that would have undone me, when I would have rushed to believe it meant change, forgiveness, reunion. But I'd learned the hard way that words were cheap if they weren't followed by growth. So I didn't reply, not out of spite, but out of peace. I just turned off my phone and looked out the window at the city lights flickering below. Somewhere, in another part of town, my family was probably sitting together, still believing I'd regret walking away. But as I stood there, the glow of my study lamp behind me, the sound of my heartbeat steady and calm, I knew they were wrong. I didn't regret it, not for a second. I whispered into the quiet room, maybe they'll never see who I became, but I do, and that's enough.